Captain Hyunwoo Park felt the cold metal floor against his knees. His hands were tied behind his back with thick alien rope that cut into his skin. Blood dripped from his broken nose onto the shiny deck of the enemy ship. But he kept his head up high. He was a United States Marine and he would die like one. Next to him, Lieutenant Dae-hyun Kim was breathing hard through his mouth. The aliens had broken some of his ribs during the beating. His left eye was swollen shut and purple bruises covered his face. But he sat straight and looked forward with his good eye. He would not give these monsters the satisfaction of seeing him break. On his other side, Sergeant Bo-Ram Lee was the calmest of them all. She had a cut on her forehead that kept bleeding into her eyes. Every few seconds she had to blink to clear her vision, but her jaw was set firm and her shoulders were square. She stared at the alien commander with pure hatred burning in her dark eyes. The 3 Marines had been captured during a rescue mission 3 days ago. They were trying to save human prisoners from an alien work camp on the planet Altaris Prime. The mission had gone wrong when someone betrayed their location to the enemy. Now they were going to pay the price on live television for the whole galaxy to see. The alien commander was a tall reptile creature with golden scales that caught the light. His name was General Vexmore and he commanded the Altarian battle fleet. He stood in front of the 3 humans wearing his ceremonial armor. Behind him were 12 other aliens holding energy weapons pointed at the Marines. General Vexmore looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting across all Federation worlds. His voice was deep and cold when he spoke in perfect English. He had learned the human language just for this moment. He wanted every human watching to understand exactly what was happening. The general began his speech for the cameras. He talked about human crimes against the superior Altarian race. He said humans were violent animals who did not belong in civilized space. He claimed the 3 Marines had killed innocent Altarian workers during their illegal raid on the prison camp. Captain Park knew it was all lies. The humans they had tried to rescue were being worked to death in the alien mines. Men, women, and children forced to dig for rare minerals 20 hours a day. Given barely enough food to survive and beaten if they worked too slow. The Marines had seen the bodies of humans who had died from exhaustion and disease, but none of that mattered now. The aliens needed to make an example out of human soldiers. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans could be controlled through fear. That Earth would think twice before sending military forces to protect their people in alien space. The execution ropes were brought forward by alien soldiers. They were made from some kind of black fiber that would not stretch or break. Each rope had been blessed by Altarian priests according to their ancient customs. To them, this was not just an execution, but a religious ceremony. General Vexmore continued his speech as the nooses were placed around the necks of the 3 Marines. He talked about the natural order of the galaxy, how advanced species like the Altarians had the right to rule over primitive ones like humans, how Earth should be grateful that the Federation allowed them to exist at all. Lieutenant Kim wanted to spit in the alien general's face, but his mouth was too dry. Instead, he used his last words to send a message to anyone watching. His voice was hoarse from the beating, but still clear enough for the microphones to pick up. He said he was proud to be a Marine, and proud to die for his country and his people. Sergeant Lee spoke next. She looked straight into the camera and told her family back on Earth that she loved them. She said she was not afraid to die because she knew other Marines would come to finish what they had started. Her voice was steady and strong, even with the rope around her neck. Captain Park spoke last. As the ranking officer, he felt responsible for his soldiers even in death. He told the alien commander that killing them would not make Earth back down. He said humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they knew how to honor their dead. He promised that these executions would be answered. General Vexmore laughed at the human captain. He said Earth was too far away and too weak to do anything about 3 dead soldiers. The Federation would protect Altarian space from any human revenge. The galaxy would see that humans were all talk and no action when it came to real military power. The alien general gave the signal to his soldiers. The 3 Marines were lifted off the deck by mechanical systems built into the ship's ceiling. They died without making a sound or begging for mercy. Their bodies hung in the artificial gravity, as General Vexmore concluded his broadcast with threats against Earth and all human colonies. What the aliens did not know was that the broadcast signal carried more than just video and audio. Hidden inside the transmission was a tiny data packet that contained the exact location of the execution ship. It also held coded information about Altarian fleet positions and defense systems. The packet had been planted by human intelligence agents months earlier. When the broadcast ended, the signal traveled across the galaxy through hyperspace relays. It reached Earth in less than 6 hours, where it was received by dozens of listening stations. Most of them were operated by normal military intelligence services who recorded everything for later analysis. But 3 of those stations were different. They were operated by people who did not officially exist and commanded resources that were not on any government budget. These were the black sites where Earth's most dangerous secrets were kept locked away from the rest of the universe. In Sci-Fi, bunker buried under the Rocky Mountains, an ancient computer system activated protocols that had been sleeping for years. Encrypted messages went out to hidden bases around the solar system. Orders were given to wake up soldiers who had been in suspended animation waiting for this exact moment. The Altarians thought they had sent a message about power and control. Instead, they had just triggered the most classified military operation in human history. The 3 Marines had died as heroes, but their deaths would be the beginning of something much larger than anyone could imagine. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this day for a very long time. The first thing Colonel Minjung Choi felt was cold air filling her lungs. She had been asleep in the cryogenic pod for 18 months waiting for the activation signal. Now the pod was opening, and warm light was hitting her face for the first time since she had volunteered for the Ghost Division program. Around her, 49 other pods were opening at the same time. Each one contained a soldier who had been selected from the best special forces units on Earth. They were not ordinary soldiers. Each one had been enhanced with experimental technology that made them faster, stronger, and smarter than any normal human. Colonel Choi sat up slowly as her body adjusted to being awake again. The cryo sleep had kept her muscles from getting weak, but it still took a few minutes for everything to work properly. She looked around the underground facility and saw her soldiers climbing out of their pods and checking their equipment. The base was located 3 kilometers under the Mojave Desert in California. It had been built in secret over 10 years using alien technology that had been recovered from crashed ships. The walls were made from materials that could not be detected by any known scanning system. As far as the rest of the world was concerned, this place did not exist. Captain Tai Minseo was the first soldier to report ready for duty. He had lost his right arm in a combat mission 5 years ago, and it had been replaced with a cybernetic prosthetic that was stronger than the original. The artificial limb could crush steel and had built-in weapon systems that made him a walking arsenal. Sergeant Yoon Ji-han was checking the neural interface that had been implanted in her brain. The device let her communicate directly with computer systems and control multiple weapons at the same time. She could process tactical information faster than any normal human and make split-second decisions in combat situations. Dr. Sung Hwan Lim entered the awakening chamber as the soldiers finished their equipment checks. He was the scientist who had created the Ghost Division program after studying alien biology and technology for 20 years. His eyes were red from crying as he looked at the enhanced soldiers he had helped create. The doctor activated the main display screen and showed the soldiers footage from the Altarian execution broadcast. They watched in silence as their fellow Marines died on live television. Several of the Ghost Division soldiers clenched their fists so hard that their cybernetic enhancements cracked the metal railings they were holding. Dr. Lim explained that the 3 executed Marines had been trying to rescue human prisoners from Altarian labor camps. The aliens had been using human workers as slaves for years, and the Federation had done nothing to stop it. Earth had tried diplomatic solutions, but the aliens only responded to force. The mission briefing was simple, but terrifying in its scope. Ghost Division would travel to the Altarian home system and eliminate everyone responsible for the execution of the Marines. But that was just the beginning. They would also destroy the military infrastructure that supported the alien empire and send a message to the entire galaxy. Major Won Seok Park raised his hand and asked about rules of engagement. Dr. Lim looked at him with sad eyes and said there were no rules for this mission. The aliens had declared war on humanity when they murdered prisoners on live television. Ghost Division was authorized to use any means necessary to complete their objectives. Lieutenant Commander Yoo-Jin Kim asked about civilian casualties. She had been a Navy SEAL before joining the program and was used to surgical strikes that avoided harming innocent people. Dr. Lim explained that the Altarian government controlled every aspect of their society. There were no true civilians in their empire, only people who supported the system that had killed human soldiers. The weapons and equipment prepared for Ghost Division were unlike anything that officially existed. Their assault rifles used caseless ammunition that left no evidence behind. Their explosives were based on antimatter technology that created explosions hot enough to vaporize any traces of human involvement. Their body armor could turn invisible and stop energy weapons that could punch through tank armor. Each soldier was given a neural implant that contained detailed information about Altarian language, culture, and technology. They would be able to speak like natives and understand alien equipment better than most Altarians did. The implants also contained kill switches that would destroy the soldier's brain if they were captured alive. Captain Haiwan Lee was in charge of the demolitions team. She had been an army engineer before her enhancement and knew how to bring down buildings, bridges, and ships with surgical precision. Her job was to identify the most important targets in the Altarian system and plant charges that would cripple their civilization. Sergeant First Class Jae Sung-yu commanded the sniper team. He had been enhanced with cybernetic eyes that could see targets at impossible distances and track multiple moving objects at once. His rifle used electromagnetic acceleration to fire projectiles at nearly the speed of light. No armor in the galaxy could stop his bullets. The transport ship waiting for them in orbit was called Silent Thunder. It used stealth technology reverse-engineered from alien vessels that had been shot down during border conflicts. The ship could travel through hyperspace without being detected by any known sensor system. It was essentially invisible to the rest of the galaxy. As the soldiers prepared for deployment, Dr. Lim gave them one final briefing. He explained that this mission would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Earth had been pretending to be a peaceful member of the Federation while secretly preparing for war. The execution of the 3 Marines had given them the excuse they needed to reveal their true capabilities. Ghost Division would prove that humanity was not the weak species that other civilizations thought they were. They had been studying alien weaknesses for decades and developing weapons specifically designed to exploit them. The enhanced soldiers were just the first wave of a military revolution that would reshape the galaxy. The mission timeline was simple. They would travel to the Altarian system under stealth and conduct reconnaissance for 72 hours. Then they would launch simultaneous attacks on multiple targets designed to cripple the alien government and military. The attacks would be coordinated to cause maximum psychological impact on any survivors. Colonel Choi looked at her soldiers and felt proud of what they had become. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still fighting for humanity. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking that mercy was the same as weakness. Ghost Division would teach them the difference between the two concepts. As the enhanced soldiers boarded the transport ship, they knew that many of them would not return from this mission. But they also knew that their sacrifice would ensure that no alien species would ever again think it was safe to murder human prisoners for entertainment. The 3 executed Marines would be avenged, and the galaxy would learn to fear Earth. The ghost ship Silent Thunder appeared at the edge of the Altarian star system like a nightmare made real. The stealth vessel had traveled through hyperspace for 6 days without being detected by a single Federation sensor array. Now it hung in the darkness between planets, completely invisible to the massive alien fleet that patrolled the system. Major Won-Seok Park stood in the ship's command center studying holographic displays that showed every Altarian military installation within 50 light minutes. The aliens had built their empire around a massive blue star that provided energy for dozens of orbital platforms. Each platform was the size of a small city and housed millions of Altarian citizens. The intelligence data from the execution broadcast had given them exact locations for every important target in the system. The orbital station where General Fexmore had his headquarters, the shipyards that built Altarian warships, the fuel depots that supplied their fleet. the communication centers that controlled their military networks. Lieutenant Commander Yoojin Kim was preparing her infiltration team for the first phase of the operation. She had 6 specialists who had been trained to pass as Altarian citizens using stolen uniforms and forged identity documents. Their mission was to plant quantum resonance charges throughout the primary command station without being detected. The team had been studying Altarian culture and language for 2 years. They knew how the aliens walked, talked, and behaved in social situations. They understood the military hierarchy and the political structure that controlled the empire. Most importantly, they knew how to kill Altarians quietly and efficiently. Yoojin checked her equipment one final time before boarding the captured patrol craft they would use to approach the command station. Her body armor was designed to look like Altarian clothing while still stopping energy weapons. Her sidearm was built to mimic alien technology, but fired rounds that could penetrate their strongest materials. The quantum charges she carried were each no bigger than a coin, but contained enough destructive power to collapse a building. When activated, they would create microscopic tears in spacetime that made the surrounding area toxic to any form of life. The explosions would leave no trace of human technology behind. Sergeant First Class Jae Sung-yu was setting up his sniper position on a captured asteroid 3,000 kilometers from the main orbital platform. His enhanced cybernetic eyes could see targets at that distance as clearly as if they were standing next to him. His electromagnetic rail rifle could punch through any armor the aliens possessed. The smart ammunition he loaded into his weapon was guided by tiny computer systems that could track moving targets and adjust for gravity, atmospheric conditions, and even solar wind. Once he pulled the trigger, the bullet would find its target no matter how much the enemy tried to dodge or take cover. Jae Sung had identified 17 high-value targets from the intelligence data, government officials, military commanders, and business leaders who had supported the decision to execute the human Marines. Each one would die at exactly the same moment when the coordinated attack began. Captain Haiwan Lee was reviewing the structural plans for the Altarian fuel depot and weapons manufacturing facilities. Her demolitions team had been studying the aliens' engineering methods and had discovered several critical weaknesses that could be exploited with the right kind of explosives. The antimatter charges she planned to use were based on containment failures that would make the explosions look like accidents. The aliens would think their own technology had malfunctioned until it was too late to mount an effective defense. The chain reaction would destroy 60% of their fleet before they could raise shields. Haiwan had calculated that the explosions would be visible from neighboring star systems. The psychological impact would be just as important as the physical damage. Every alien civilization in the galaxy would see what happened when they threatened human lives. Corporal Min Ho Jung was preparing for the information warfare phase of the operation. He had hacked into the same broadcast system the Altarians had used to show the Marine executions. When the attacks began, he would hijack every communication channel in the system to show the aliens dying. The footage would be edited to maximize the psychological impact on anyone watching. The same aliens who had laughed at human deaths would be shown screaming as their leaders were eliminated one by one. The message would be clear that humanity remembered every insult and repaid every injury with interest. Minho had also planted computer viruses in the Altarian military networks that would activate during the attack. Their defense systems would malfunction, their ships would lose navigation, and their weapons would fire on their own forces. Chaos would multiply the effectiveness of every Ghost Division strike team. Colonel Min Jung Choi reviewed the final mission timeline with her team leaders. The attacks would begin at exactly 0300 hours Altarian Standard Time when most of the enemy would be asleep. Each team would operate independently with no communication between units until the mission was complete. The coordination was perfect, because every soldier had been enhanced with neural implants that contained synchronized timing systems. They would strike 17 different targets at the exact same moment, across hundreds of thousands of kilometers of space. The aliens would have no time to warn each other or mount a coordinated defense. The infiltration team launched first in their captured patrol craft. They approached the command station using legitimate security codes that had been stolen months earlier by human intelligence agents. The Altarian guards waved them through without conducting any kind of inspection. Yoojin and her team walked through the corridors of the station like they belonged there. They had studied security footage for weeks and knew the patrol routes and shift changes by heart. They placed quantum charges in critical structural points that would bring down the entire complex when activated. The sniper teams moved into position around the system, using small stealth pods that looked like space debris to enemy sensors. Each sniper had multiple targets and backup escape routes planned. They would have less than 30 seconds to complete their kills before enemy forces could react. The demolitions teams approached their targets using maintenance tunnels and service corridors that were not monitored by security systems. They planted charges that would destroy fuel lines, power conduits, and weapons storage areas. The explosions would cascade through the alien infrastructure like dominoes falling. As the teams moved into final positions, the Altarian system continued its normal routine. The aliens had no idea that death was already walking among them. They thought the execution of 3 human Marines had ended the threat from Earth. Instead, it had only marked the beginning of their own destruction. In 6 hours, the synchronized attacks would begin, and the Altarian Empire would cease to exist as a functioning government. The 3 executed Marines would be avenged, and the galaxy would learn that humanity was not a species that forgave or forgot when their people were murdered for entertainment. At exactly 0300 hours Altarian Standard Time, the quantum charges planted by Lieutenant Commander Eugene Kim activated across 17 different levels of the primary command station. The explosions did not make loud noises or bright flashes. Instead, they created tears in the fabric of space itself that consumed everything within a 100-meter radius. The Altarian High Command was holding an emergency session to discuss whether they should execute more human prisoners when the floor beneath their conference room simply stopped existing. Fleet Admiral Krextal, who had personally signed the execution order for the 3 Marines, fell screaming into a void that tore his body apart at the molecular level. The quantum explosions spread through the station like a disease eating away at the structure from inside. Bulkheads collapsed into themselves, creating black holes the size of dinner plates that sucked in everything nearby. Emergency systems tried to activate, but the electronics were destroyed by radiation that existed in dimensions the aliens had never discovered. General Vexmore was in his private quarters when the attack began. He felt the station shaking and heard alarms going off in the distance, but he had no idea what was happening. When he tried to contact the bridge, his communication system was dead. When he tried to leave his quarters, the corridor outside had been replaced by empty space. The general floated in his environmental suit looking at the wreckage of his command station. Half of it was simply gone as if it had never existed. The other half was twisted into impossible shapes that hurt his eyes to look at. He could see other survivors floating in the void, but there was no way to reach them. 3,000 kilometers away, Sergeant First Class Jae-Sung Yu squeezed the trigger of his electromagnetic rail rifle. The projectile crossed the distance in less than half a second and struck Altarian Defense Minister Kexvor in the center of his skull. The smart round punched through his brain and continued traveling until it hit 2 bodyguards standing behind him. The bullet had been programmed to adjust its trajectory after each impact. It struck the first bodyguard in the throat and the second in the heart, before finally embedding itself in a titanium wall. All 3 targets died instantly without knowing they were under attack. Jae-Sung was already acquiring his next target before the first body hit the ground. His cybernetic eyes tracked Admiral Texmar as he ran for cover behind an armored vehicle. The sniper fired again, and the bullet curved around the obstacle to strike the fleeing alien in the spine. The Admiral collapsed, paralyzed but still alive, to suffer. Across the system, the other sniper teams were eliminating their assigned targets with mechanical precision. Government officials died at their desks. Military commanders were shot while giving orders to their troops. Business leaders who had profited from human slave labor were killed while eating dinner with their families. Captain Hai Wan Lee pressed the detonation switch for the antimatter charges she had planted in the main fuel depot. The explosion started as a tiny point of light that expanded faster than the speed of thought. Within seconds, it had consumed a structure the size of Manhattan and was spreading toward the nearby fleet anchorage. The chain reaction jumped from ship to ship as fuel tanks ruptured and weapons magazines exploded. Altarian vessels that had taken decades to build were vaporized in moments. The explosions were so bright they could be seen from the edge of the star system, where other alien species maintained observation posts. Haiwan watched through her scope as 12 Dreadnought-class battleships ceased to exist. These were the most powerful warships in the Altarian fleet, each one capable of destroying a planet. Now they were expanding clouds of superheated plasma that glowed like miniature suns. The weapons manufacturing facility exploded next, sending fragments of exotic matter spinning through space at relativistic speeds. Several pieces struck other orbital platforms, causing secondary explosions that added to the chaos. The carefully ordered Altarian system was becoming a debris field that would be dangerous to navigate for centuries. Corporal Minho Jung activated his virus programs at the exact moment the physical attacks began. Altarian military networks crashed as their own computers turned against them. Defense satellites began firing on friendly ships. Navigation systems sent vessels directly into asteroid fields. Communication arrays broadcast nothing but static. Minho hijacked the same broadcast channels the aliens had used to show the Marine executions. Now the galaxy was watching Altarian leaders die in dozens of creative ways. The footage was edited to show the aliens' greatest moments of terror and pain, stretched out for maximum psychological impact. The virus program spread through every networked system in the Altarian Empire. Banking records were erased. Government databases were corrupted. Military command codes were scrambled. Even basic services like power and water distribution were shut down on worlds throughout their territory. The surviving Altarian forces tried to mount a counterattack, but they were fighting an enemy they could not see, using tactics they did not understand. Their sensors showed nothing but empty space where the human attacks were coming from. Their weapons fired at ghosts that vanished before the energy beams could reach them. Colonel Minjung Choi watched the destruction from the Bridge of Silent Thunder as her teams reported mission success across all objectives. The Altarian government no longer existed as a functioning entity. Their military was scattered and leaderless. Their industrial capacity had been reduced to drifting wreckage. But the mission was not finished. The colonel activated the final phase of the operation, which involved psychological warfare designed to ensure no other alien species would make the same mistake as the Altarians. The message had to be clear that this was not a random act of violence, but calculated revenge for specific crimes. Ghost Division transmitted a recording to every government in the galaxy. It showed the 3 Marines being executed, followed immediately by footage of Altarian leaders dying. The message was simple: humanity remembered every insult and repaid every injury with compound interest. The recording included detailed technical specifications for the weapons that had destroyed the Altarian fleet. It showed exactly how the quantum charges worked and how the antimatter explosives had been constructed. The message was clear that Earth possessed technology far more advanced than anything the Federation had seen. Other alien civilizations received the transmission and immediately began emergency sessions to review their own policies toward human civilians and military personnel. Several species that had been planning attacks on human colonies quietly canceled their operations. The price of antagonizing Earth had just become too high. The Altarian homeworld was in chaos as news of the attacks spread. Billions of civilians watched their government and military disappear in a single night. There was no one left to give orders or coordinate a response. The empire that had ruled dozens of star systems for thousands of years had ceased to exist. General Vexmore was still floating in space when he saw the final transmission from the human attackers. It was a simple message addressed specifically to him. The voice was calm and professional as it explained that this was payment for the 3 Marines he had executed on live television. The transmission told him that he was being left alive as a witness to carry the message to any other aliens who might think about harming human prisoners. He would spend the rest of his life remembering that humanity did not forgive or forget when their people were murdered for entertainment. As Ghost Division prepared to withdraw from the system, they had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. They had destroyed an entire interstellar empire in less than 12 hours, using forces that officially did not exist. The 3 executed Marines had been avenged, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Federation Council convened an emergency session 12 hours after the destruction of the Altarian Empire. Representatives from 200 alien civilizations gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Kepler Station. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as species that had never shown fear began to question everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Ambassador So Young Park walked into the chamber with calm confidence that made the alien delegates more nervous than any threat could have. She was a small woman by human standards, but she carried herself like someone who knew exactly how much power she represented. Her simple black diplomatic suit contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien representatives. The Zephyrian delegate was the first to speak. He was an insect-like creature, whose species had been part of the Federation for over 3,000 years. His voice made chittering sounds as he accused Earth of committing an act of war against a member world. He demanded that humans be expelled from the Federation and their territory occupied by peacekeeping forces. Ambassador Park smiled at the Zephyrian, and several aliens in the front row actually stepped backward. They had all seen the footage of Altarian leaders being killed in creative ways. They knew that humans were capable of violence that went far beyond anything the galaxy had experienced before. The ambassador activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed before and after images of the Altarian system, where there had once been a thriving empire with billions of citizens and thousands of warships. There was now only drifting debris and a few survivors floating in space. So Young spoke in a calm voice that carried clearly through the chamber's translation systems. She explained that the Federation seemed confused about what had happened in the Altarian system. 3 human Marines had been captured during a legitimate rescue operation. Instead of being treated as prisoners of war, they had been tortured and executed on live television for the entertainment of alien audiences. The ambassador continued by pointing out that the Altarians had not just killed 3 soldiers. They had broadcast the murders across the galaxy as a warning to other humans about what happened when Earth tried to protect its citizens. The message had been clear that human lives were worthless and that Earth was too weak to respond. The response had been equally clear. Every individual responsible for the executions had been eliminated along with the military infrastructure that supported their decision. The Altarian government had ceased to exist, and their fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma. This was not an act of war, but a proportional response to the murder of prisoners. The Vegan delegate interrupted to point out that the destruction had been far greater than 3 deaths warranted. His species was known for their mathematical approach to justice, and they calculated that millions of Altarians had died in the attacks. How could humans justify such massive retaliation for the loss of 3 soldiers? Ambassador Park looked at the vegan with the patience of someone explaining simple mathematics to a child. She reminded the chamber that the 3 Marines had been trying to rescue human prisoners who were being worked to death in Altarian labor camps. Thousands of humans had died in those facilities over the years, while the Federation did nothing to stop the abuse. The ambassador also pointed out that the attacks had been precisely targeted to eliminate only those responsible for the executions and the infrastructure that supported them. Civilian casualties had been minimized wherever possible. If the Altarians had wanted to avoid destruction, they should not have tortured prisoners on live television. The Rigelian delegate tried a different approach. His species was one of the oldest in the galaxy, and they had always maintained that violence should be the last resort in any conflict. He suggested that Earth should have used diplomatic channels to seek justice for their dead soldiers instead of launching military attacks. So Young laughed, and the sound made several aliens reach for weapons they were not carrying. She reminded the chamber that Earth had been using diplomatic solutions for decades while their citizens were enslaved, tortured, and murdered by Federation member species. The only thing diplomacy had accomplished was to convince the aliens that humans were weak and could be abused with impunity. The ambassador activated another display showing intelligence reports from dozens of worlds where humans were being mistreated by alien governments. Slavery was common on 17 different planets. Human prisoners were being used for medical experiments on 8 worlds. 3 species were hunting humans for sport in what they called safari expeditions. All of these abuses had been reported to the Federation Council through proper diplomatic channels. All of them had been dismissed or ignored because the alien species involved were more politically powerful than Earth. The message was clear that human lives did not matter to the galactic community. The Altarian executions had been the final insult that triggered a change in human policy. Earth was no longer asking for permission to protect its citizens. They were informing the galaxy that attacks on humans would result in immediate and overwhelming retaliation, regardless of diplomatic consequences. The Andromedan delegate pointed out that such a policy would lead to chaos throughout the galaxy. If every species started using military force instead of diplomatic solutions, then the Federation itself would collapse. There had to be rules about proportional response and civilized behavior between member worlds. Ambassador Park agreed that there should be rules about civilized behavior. The rules should include not torturing prisoners of war and not executing captured soldiers on live television for entertainment. The rules should also include not enslaving citizens of other species and not using them for medical experiments. Earth was willing to follow those rules as long as other species did the same. But if alien governments decided that humans were fair game for abuse, then they would discover that the reverse was also true. The choice was entirely up to the individual species and their governments. The chamber fell silent as the implications of the ambassador's words sank in. Earth was essentially declaring that they would match any level of violence directed against their citizens. If aliens wanted to play by civilized rules, then humans would be civilized. If aliens preferred brutality, then humans could be far more brutal than anyone imagined. Several delegates tried to argue that Earth did not have the military capacity to threaten established galactic powers. The ambassador responded by showing technical specifications for the weapons that had destroyed the Altarian fleet. The quantum charges and antimatter explosives were based on scientific principles that most alien civilizations did not understand. The message was clear that Earth possessed technology far more advanced than anything the Federation had seen. The destruction of the Altarian Empire had been accomplished using forces that officially did not exist. If humanity decided to reveal their true military capabilities, then the balance of power in the galaxy would shift dramatically. The session ended without any formal declarations against Earth, because the Federation Council realized something terrifying. If humans could destroy a major interstellar empire without any of their official fleets leaving human space, then what could they do if Earth actually decided to go to war? Ambassador Park left the chamber knowing that the message had been received and understood. The 3 executed Marines had been avenged, but more importantly, the galaxy now knew that humanity would not tolerate attacks on their people. The age of human victimhood was over, and the age of human dominance was about to begin. 6 months after the Altarian incident, the galaxy had changed forever. Human merchant ships now traveled with minimal escort because no pirate group was willing to risk triggering another proportional response. The Federation had quietly amended their justice protocols to exclude humans from corporal punishment, though they never admitted the connection. Colonel Minjung Choi stood in the memorial garden on Luna, reading the names of the 3 Marines whose deaths had started it all. Captain Hyunwoo Park, Lieutenant Daehyun Kim, and Sergeant Boram Lee had become symbols of something larger than military service. They represented humanity's refusal to accept victim status in a hostile galaxy. The Ghost Division remained active but hidden, their existence officially denied by Earth's government. They had established listening posts throughout Federation space and maintained strike teams ready for deployment within hours. The enhanced soldiers had become humanity's immune system, designed to eliminate threats before they could harm human interests. Dr. Sung-Hwan Lim reviewed reports from his hidden laboratory, where the next generation of enhanced soldiers was being prepared. The aliens had taught humanity an important lesson about galactic politics. Strength was the only currency that mattered. Earth was investing heavily in that currency. Admiral Jin Ho Yoon received daily intelligence briefings about alien military, movements, and political developments. Humanity was no longer reacting to galactic events, but actively shaping them. 3 dead Marines had become the catalyst for Earth's transformation from a junior member of the Federation to its most feared military power. The executed Marines had been avenged, but their sacrifice had accomplished something even more important. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not be intimidated, controlled, or eliminated through fear. The Federation had tried to teach humans about their place in the galactic hierarchy, Instead, they had learned that humanity's place was wherever they chose to stand, and they would kill anyone who tried to move them from it.